My life always seemed perfect. When someone asked me if I was happy, I would answer without hesitation, yes, I have everything anyone could ever dream of. I had a wonderful wife whom I loved with all my heart. She wasn't just my partner. She was my best friend, the person I shared my dreams, successes, and even my most absurd ideas with. And then there was him, my godfather, my best friend, my brother in all but blood. He was the person I trusted completely. We had been through so much together: school, university, our first steps in our careers. He was always there when I needed support or advice. When my wife and I had our child, choosing him as the godfather was an obvious decision. He was the first person I asked to become a part of our family. I remember his words, "It's an honor for me. I will always be there for you." Our life looked like a real fairy tale. We celebrated every important occasion together: birthdays, New Year's anniversaries. Our evenings were filled with laughter, jokes, and plans for the future. We talked about vacations, how we'd go to the beach as a family next summer. My godfather often came over for dinners, babysat our child, and even helped out around the house. I looked at him and thought, how lucky am I to have people I can rely on? I considered him part of our family. He was the one who always knew the right words, who supported me when I doubted myself. All our friends envied me. "You're so lucky to have such a great wife and such a good friend," they'd say. And I believed them. I believed that my life was the best thing that could have happened to me. But life is a funny way of throwing surprises at you. Often, the most unexpected blows come from those you consider the closest. I looked at my life as though it were a perfect painting, with every piece of the mosaic fitting together seamlessly. But it was an illusion, just a beautiful picture hiding cracks that grew bigger with each passing day. I didn't know that my life was just a false image, a house of cards waiting to collapse. This was only the beginning of a story that would forever change me, my family, and the way I saw the people I once considered my closest. Life went on in its usual rhythm. Everything seemed normal: warm family evenings, friendly conversations, smiles, shared jokes. But sometimes small details, ones we usually overlook, begin to stand out like red flags. And it's those details that make us wonder if everything is really as it seems. I started noticing something strange in the behavior of my wife and my godfather. It began with small things. For instance, when we were all sitting at the table, they often exchanged quick glances. Their eyes would meet, and in those moments, there seemed to be something invisible between them, something only they understood. At first, I wrote it off as jokes or coincidences, but it happened too often to ignore. One evening during dinner, my godfather said something that made my wife laugh louder than usual. Her laughter was genuine, even a bit flirtatious. I didn't think much of it at the time, but it stuck in my mind. Their jokes started becoming more personal, as though they had a hidden meaning only the two of them understood. Then there was an incident that made me stop and think. One evening, I walked into the living room and saw my wife sitting on the couch with her phone in her hands. She was typing something, smiling broadly. I didn't say anything and decided to approach her to give her a hug. But when she saw me, she immediately put her phone down, screen facing the couch. Her smile disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. "Who are you texting?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, just a co-worker," she replied, slightly flustered. Her voice was calm, but I sensed a tension in it that I hadn't noticed before. My trust in her had always been absolute, but that moment planted a seed of doubt. If it was just a co-worker, why would she hide her phone when she saw me? Why did her expression change so quickly? The next day, I decided to pay closer attention. I began noticing how they acted when we were all together. With each passing day, my suspicions grew. I saw how they avoided talking for too long in my presence, but their eyes still met occasionally. Their jokes became increasingly suggestive. One day, while having coffee with my godfather, I asked, "How are things? What are you up to?" He responded as usual, but I noticed that when talking about his activities, he always avoided mentioning my wife, even when it would have made sense to. It felt odd. Questions began forming in my mind. Was I just imagining things? Could it be that these were just fantasies with no basis? But at the same time, something inside me whispered, "Be careful. This isn't just coincidence." Their behavior made me doubt. But what exactly were they hiding? And was I ready to find out the truth? This was just the beginning. A small crack in our lives, slowly growing into a chasm that was about to consume everything. When doubts begin to creep into your mind, they slowly grow into something larger, until they start to control your thoughts. I tried convincing myself that I was just imagining things, that my wife and my godfather couldn't possibly do something like this to me. But those small details I noticed were like shards of glass, cutting deeper and deeper into my consciousness. I started paying closer attention to their behavior. At first, it was just observations, how often my godfather visited, how they interacted when I was around. But the more I watched, the more I noticed. Previously, he would come over only when we had planned something together. A family dinner, a movie night, or just a friendly chat. But now his visits had become far more frequent. And what was strange was that most of them happened when I wasn't home. One day, I came home earlier than usual. A work meeting had been canceled, and I decided to use the time to spend it with my family. But as I pulled up to our house, I saw his car parked by the gate. For a moment, I stopped, thinking it might just be a coincidence that he had simply stopped by to discuss something important. I walked into the house. The living room was empty. I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. They were speaking softly, but I could recognize laughter. Her laughter. The same genuine, light laughter that used to be reserved for me. I walked into the kitchen, pretending not to suspect anything. "Oh, you're here," she exclaimed, her voice slightly nervous. "Hey," I said, glancing at my godfather. "What's going on? Something happened that brought you by." He smiled and replied, "Oh no, I just wanted to talk about something small. But we've already figured it out. I'm heading out now." His voice was calm, but I felt something was off. His gaze seemed to avoid mine, and her smile was too forced. She quickly started tidying something on the table, trying to look busy. "What was it you wanted to talk about?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Oh, nothing important. Just a minor thing," he replied. When he left, I turned to her. "Why was he here? And why didn't you tell me he stopped by?" She shrugged and replied, "He just dropped in for a minute to clarify something. I didn't think it was important." Her words didn't convince me. I started noticing details I had previously overlooked. For instance, the cups left on the table after his visits. They were always neatly washed, as if she didn't want me to see that he had coffee there. I also noticed that she had started locking her phone more often, even when she was at home. I began discreetly asking friends. One of them said, "Your godfather seems to visit your place a lot. Are you guys working on some project together?" Those words made me even more cautious. I had never mentioned that he frequently came over. This meant their meetings were noticeable even to others. My doubts began to turn into suspicion. I could no longer ignore these small pieces of the puzzle, which were forming a picture that terrified me. But I still didn't have proof. I knew something wasn't right, but I needed evidence. I decided my next step was to uncover the truth at any cost. I knew that if I were wrong, it would be the most difficult test of our marriage. But if I was right, this truth would change my life forever. My suspicions had become unbearable. Every time I saw them together, I felt like they were hiding something from me. But their behavior was so careful that I couldn't find a single piece of concrete evidence. It was an internal battle. I wanted to trust them, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore all the red flags waving in front of me. I knew the only way to find out the truth was to see it with my own eyes. And then an idea came to me, one that at first seemed radical. I decided to install a hidden camera in our bedroom. Of course, I justified it as a matter of safety. A few weeks earlier, we had talked about how it might be a good idea to install cameras in the house for our peace of mind, as there had been reports of break-ins in the area. She had supported the idea herself, so now it became the perfect cover for my plan. I went to a specialty store and bought a tiny camera. It was so small that it could easily be hidden in a decorative item in the room. The salesperson assured me that the recording quality would be excellent, even at night. I remember holding the camera in my hands, thinking, what am I doing? Is this right? Am I crossing a line? But a voice in my head answered, you need to know the truth, even if it destroys you. That night, after my wife went to bed early, I installed the camera. I chose a spot where it would be impossible to notice, inside one of the decorative items on the shelf. The camera was so well hidden that it seemed even I wouldn't have been able to find it if I didn't know where it was. As I stepped back to inspect my work, I felt a knot of anxiety in my chest. This was a line I had never thought I would cross. But the need to know the truth outweighed any guilt or doubt I felt about my actions. I had no idea that the truth I was about to uncover would not only shatter the illusion of my life, but also ignite a chain of events that would change everything forever. When I finished setting everything up, I sat in the dark, staring at the room that had once been a symbol of our love and trust. Now, it had become the place where I sought the truth I was terrified to discover. The days that followed were unbearable. I tried to act normal, but inside, everything was boiling. I continued to notice the little hints, exchanged glances, quiet conversations, and each time, my suspicions grew stronger. I could barely wait to be alone and review the footage. When the moment finally came, I sat in front of my laptop, trembling as I started the video. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear every beat. What if there's nothing there? What if I'm wrong, and this is just my paranoia? I asked myself, but alongside those thoughts was another, more unsettling one. What if everything I suspect is true? I pressed play and started watching. At first, there was nothing suspicious, just ordinary footage. Her doing chores, reading a book, talking on the phone. But a few hours into the recording, I saw him enter our house. She greeted him at the door with a smile I hadn't seen her give me in a long time. My heart sank. I kept watching, though each frame felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. Their looks, their gestures, even their laughter, all of it confirmed my worst fears. And when they sat on our bed, talking and laughing, I realized their words no longer mattered. Their actions spoke louder than any excuse they could come up with. This recording might have been the most painful thing I've ever seen, but I was ready to take that risk. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, staring at the wall. I realized I would never be the same. My world, my perception of love, trust, and family had been shattered. But alongside the pain, something else was growing within me. Determination. I decided that I wouldn't let them continue this game behind my back. Now, I had proof, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. This wasn't just betrayal. It was something far greater, and they would pay for it. The days I spent waiting felt endless. I didn't know what I would find on those recordings, but every time I walked past our bedroom, a sense of dread gripped my chest. I didn't want to believe that my worst suspicions could be true, but I also knew that without the truth, I couldn't move forward. After several days of recording, I finally mustered the courage to watch the video. It was late at night. My wife had told me she was going to a girls' night at her friend's house, leaving me home alone. I locked the bedroom door, sat in front of my laptop, and connected the hidden camera. My hands trembled as I pressed play. At first, the footage looked entirely mundane. My wife went about her usual activities, folding clothes, watching TV, talking on the phone. Everything seemed normal, almost too normal to raise suspicion. I even began to think that maybe I had been wrong, that all of this was just a figment of my imagination. But then he appeared, my godfather. His sudden presence in our bedroom instantly made my heart race. She greeted him with a smile that felt both familiar and completely foreign to me. It wasn't just a friendly smile. There was something more, something intimate, something I hadn't seen from her in a long time. They sat on the bed. Her hand brushed his shoulder, and he leaned in closer to her. I watched in disbelief. Everything I was seeing felt like the plot of a movie, but it wasn't. It was my life. They laughed together. Their laughter echoed in the room, and it was the most painful sound I'd ever heard. It wasn't just laughter. It was the laughter of two people who were confident their secret would remain hidden. Then she leaned toward him and whispered something. At first, I couldn't make out the words, but when she repeated them louder, I heard it clearly. He'll never find out. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I froze. My hands, gripping the laptop, trembled uncontrollably. A wave of anger, pain, and despair rose within me, but I couldn't look away from the screen. Their embraces, their smiles, even the way they looked at each other, it all felt like a dagger to my heart. I kept watching, though every second of that recording felt like torture. I saw how they moved closer together, how her hand tenderly touched his face. She laughed at his jokes, leaned closer to him, and he held her as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I stopped the video when I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, trying to process what I had just witnessed. My entire life, my trust, everything I believed to be stable and real, crumbled in an instant. That was the moment my entire world fell apart before my eyes. I could no longer deny the truth. I could no longer convince myself that it was all in my head. They had betrayed me. The people I loved and trusted most had betrayed me in the worst way possible. In my own home, in my own bedroom, the place that was supposed to be my safe haven. As I finished my toast, I glanced at my wife and my godfather. They were smiling, completely unsuspecting of what was about to unfold. My heart pounded in my chest, but outwardly, I remained calm. I've prepared a little presentation. I continued, gesturing toward the laptop connected to a large screen I had arranged in the dining area. It's something that captures the most important moments of my recent journey, moments that wouldn't have been possible without the people closest to me. The room grew quiet. My wife beamed, thinking this was just another demonstration of my appreciation for her and our friends. My godfather leaned back in his chair, looking amused and relaxed. I clicked the play button on the laptop, and the screen came to life. At first, it was a slideshow of innocuous photos, scenes from work, moments of celebration, pictures of the family. Laughter rippled through the room as everyone enjoyed the lighthearted tone. But then the tone shifted. The screen transitioned to the video I had taken from the hidden camera in our bedroom. At first, the room remained silent, as the footage of my wife and godfather entering the bedroom played. Then came their laughter, their conversation, and their unmistakable intimacy. The tension in the room became unbearable as gasps and murmurs rippled through the group. My wife froze, her face turning pale. She instinctively reached for my arm, whispering, "What is this?" I ignored her, letting the video play. My godfather's confident demeanor evaporated. His eyes darted between me and the screen, his mouth slightly open in shock. When the footage ended, I closed the laptop and stood up. The silence was deafening as everyone in the room looked at me, then at the two of them, trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. "Do you have anything to say for yourselves?" I asked, my voice cold and steady. My wife stammered, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not what it looks like. I can explain." My godfather tried to regain his composure, leaning forward with his hands up in a placating gesture. Listen, this is a misunderstanding. I cut him off with a sharp glare. A misunderstanding? You think what we all just saw was a misunderstanding? The room erupted with whispers and hushed conversations among the guests. The betrayal was laid bare for everyone to see. I turned to my wife, who was now sobbing quietly. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed our family, our trust, and everything we built together. Then I turned to my godfather. And you were like a brother to me. I trusted you with everything. You were part of this family. And this is how you repay me. They both tried to speak, but I raised my hand to silence them. This isn't just about what you did to me, I said, my voice rising. It's about how you thought you could get away with it. How you thought I'd never find out. But now, everyone here knows exactly who you are. The guests were visibly uncomfortable, some looking away, others exchanging shocked glances. I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on the two people who had wronged me. I'm done, I said firmly. I've already filed for divorce. And as for you, I pointed at my godfather. I've already taken legal action against you for stealing my intellectual property. Your career, your reputation, it's over. My godfather's face turned red with anger and panic. You can't do this, he shouted. I smirked. I already have. Without another word, I grabbed my jacket and walked out of the room, leaving them to deal with the fallout. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt a weight lift off my chest. The pain was still there, but so was a newfound sense of freedom. That night marked the end of one chapter of my life, and the beginning of another. A chapter where I would no longer let betrayal define me, but instead use it as a lesson to build something stronger, something better. As I watched his life crumble, I didn't feel pity. Instead, I felt a sense of justice. This was the consequence of his choices, of his betrayal. It wasn't just the professional or financial fallout that struck him. It was the loss of trust, respect, and relationships that truly isolated him. But my plan wasn't complete. I turned my focus to my wife. She had shattered the trust and love we built over the years, and I knew I couldn't just walk away without holding her accountable. I had already filed for divorce, but I wanted her to fully understand the magnitude of her actions. She had always been confident that I would forgive her, that my love for her would override the betrayal. She underestimated how deeply she had hurt me. One evening, I returned home with a thick envelope in my hands. She greeted me at the door with a nervous smile, as though sensing something was coming. I sat her down in the living room and placed the envelope on the table. "What's this?" she asked cautiously. "Divorce papers," I said bluntly, watching as her expression transformed from confusion to panic. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope and flipped through the documents. She looked at me, her eyes welling with tears. "You can't mean this? We can fix this. Please don't throw everything away." I shook my head. "I'm not the one who threw it all away. You did. You chose this. You made your decisions, and now you have to face the consequences." Her voice cracked as she pleaded, "It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. I still love you." I stood my ground. A mistake is something you do once by accident. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to betray me. You chose to lie to me. And now I'm choosing to move on without you. I could see the panic in her eyes as she scanned the terms of the divorce. I had worked with my lawyer to ensure she wouldn't be able to claim anything significant. Everything we had built together was under my name. Our house, our savings, even her car had been purchased by me. Legally, she had no claim to it. "You're leaving me with nothing," she said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "No, irreplaceably. You're leaving yourself with nothing. You had everything, and you chose to destroy it." She tried to appeal to my emotions, crying, begging, and promising to change, but her words felt hollow. I had seen her true self, the part of her that could lie to my face while living a double life. Her tears no longer moved me. I trusted you, I said quietly, standing up to leave. I loved you, and I believed in you. But you've shown me who you really are. This is the end for us. I turned and walked out, leaving her sobbing on the couch. Her cries echoed behind me, but I didn't look back. I was done. From that moment on, my focus shifted to rebuilding my life. The betrayal had broken me, but it also gave me the strength to start over. I poured my energy into my work, using the lessons I had learned from the pain to drive me forward. My business began to flourish, and I found a renewed sense of purpose. As for my wife and my godfather, their lives became shadows of what they once were. Their betrayal had cost them everything: relationships, reputations, and even their own sense of dignity. They became reminders of the consequences of deceit. Over time, the pain lessened. I began to meet new people, form new connections, and rebuild my trust. What once felt like the end of the world became the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where I was stronger, wiser, and unafraid to demand the respect and loyalty I deserved. Looking back, I realized that their betrayal, as painful as it was, had set me free. It had forced me to confront the truth, to let go of toxic relationships, and to find a path that was truly my own. I was no longer defined by their actions or their lies. I was defined by how I rose above them. In the end, their betrayal didn't destroy me. It rebuilt me, and for that, I was grateful. Every day his life became worse and worse. What he once considered stable and reliable was now crumbling. His career was destroyed, his reputation lost, and his future looked bleak. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice. He had ruined my trust, my life, my family. But now I showed him that every action has its price. His downfall became a symbol for me that sometimes justice can be taken into your own hands. And while it didn't bring back what I had lost, it became a step toward my recovery. He was no longer a threat to me. He was simply someone who got what he deserved. After exposing him and ruining his career and reputation, it was time to turn my attention to my wife. Her betrayal was even more painful than that of my friend. She was the person I trusted the most in the world, the one with whom I had built my life. But now that trust was gone. Her words, her promises, her love, all of it turned out to be lies. I decided that she too had to face the consequences of her actions. This wasn't a decision made in a fit of rage. I gave myself time to think it through. I gathered all the necessary documents, consulted lawyers, and developed a plan. One evening, when she came home, I was sitting in the living room with a thick envelope in my hands. Her face was glowing with calmness. She even brought dinner, which she apparently wanted to make special. She acted as if nothing had happened, as if all the events of the dinner party didn't mean anything to her. "We need to talk," I said as she placed the bags on the kitchen counter. She sensed something was wrong. Her smile disappeared, and she sat on the couch across from me. "What happened?" she asked, trying to sound confident. I silently placed the envelope in front of her. She leaned forward, took it in her hands, and began to open it. When she saw what the documents were, the color drained from her face. What is this?" she whispered, though she perfectly understood what was in front of her. "These are divorce papers," I replied calmly. She began to say something, but I stopped her with a raised hand. "No excuses. You knew what you were doing. You knew this would destroy us, but you did it anyway. I don't want to be part of this lie anymore." "Please give me a chance," she exclaimed, her voice trembling and her eyes filling with tears. "It was a mistake. I never wanted it to go this far. I love you." Her words sounded hollow. I looked at her and saw only a person who had betrayed everything we had built together. "You say you love me?" I said. "Then why did you do this?" Why did you destroy our family? Love isn't just words. Love is actions. And your actions spoke louder than any words. She grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face. I'll do whatever you want. I'll change. We can start over. But I couldn't hear it anymore. Her tears, her pleas, none of it mattered to me anymore. No, I said, pulling my hand away. It's over. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. The divorce papers were drawn up so that I kept everything. I earned more, and everything we had was bought with my money. The lawyers ensured that she wouldn't be able to claim any part of my assets. Her social life also began to crumble. After that dinner, all our mutual friends found out about her betrayal. Like me, they were shocked by her actions. Many of them stopped talking to her. She lost the support she once considered stable. Now she was left alone, without a home, without financial support, without friends. She tried to seek help from her relatives, but even they couldn't understand why she had done what she did. She lost everything, but that was merely the consequence of her choice. I saw her trying to call me, leaving messages where she begged for forgiveness. But I no longer answered. My life with her was over. I couldn't go back to someone who had so easily betrayed my trust. Her downfall marked the end of this painful chapter for me. Now I could move forward, leaving it all behind. And for her, it became a lesson she likely would never forget. When something so painful and destructive happens in your life, it feels like you'll never recover. But over time, you begin to realize that even the darkest periods can make you stronger. And I realized that the betrayal I had endured wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Every day his life became worse and worse. What he once considered stable and reliable was now crumbling. His career was destroyed, his reputation lost, and his future looked bleak. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice. He had ruined my trust, my life, my family. But now I showed him that every action has its price. His downfall became a symbol for me that sometimes justice can be taken into your own hands. And while it didn't bring back what I had lost, it became a step toward my recovery. He was no longer a threat to me. He was simply someone who got what he deserved. After exposing him and ruining his career and reputation, it was time to turn my attention to my wife. Her betrayal was even more painful than that of my friend. She was the person I trusted the most in the world, the one with whom I had built my life. But now that trust was gone. Her words, her promises, her love, all of it turned out to be lies. I decided that she too had to face the consequences of her actions. This wasn't a decision made in a fit of rage. I gave myself time to think it through. I gathered all the necessary documents, consulted lawyers, and developed a plan. One evening, when she came home, I was sitting in the living room with a thick envelope in my hands. Her face was glowing with calmness. She even brought dinner, which she apparently wanted to make special. She acted as if nothing had happened, as if all the events of the dinner party didn't mean anything to her. "We need to talk," I said as she placed the bags on the kitchen counter. She sensed something was wrong. Her smile disappeared, and she sat on the couch across from me. "What happened?" she asked, trying to sound confident. I silently placed the envelope in front of her. She leaned forward, took it in her hands, and began to open it. When she saw what the documents were, the color drained from her face. What is this?" she whispered, though she perfectly understood what was in front of her. "These are divorce papers," I replied calmly. She began to say something, but I stopped her with a raised hand. "No excuses. You knew what you were doing. You knew this would destroy us, but you did it anyway. I don't want to be part of this lie anymore. Please give me a chance," she exclaimed, her voice trembling and her eyes filling with tears. "It was a mistake. I never wanted it to go this far. I love you." Her words sounded hollow. I looked at her, and saw only a person who had betrayed everything we had built together. "You say you love me?" I said. "Then why did you do this? Why did you destroy our family?" "Love isn't just words. Love is actions. And your actions spoke louder than any words." She grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do whatever you want. I'll change. We can start over." But I couldn't hear it anymore. Her tears, her pleas, none of it mattered to me anymore. "No," I said, pulling my hand away. "It's over. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." The divorce papers were drawn up so that I kept everything. I earned more, and everything we had was bought with my money. The lawyers ensured that she wouldn't be able to claim any part of my assets. Her social life also began to crumble. After that dinner, all our mutual friends found out about her betrayal. Like me, they were shocked by her actions. Many of them stopped talking to her. She lost the support she once considered stable. Now she was left alone, without a home, without financial support, without friends. She tried to seek help from her relatives, but even they couldn't understand why she had done what she did. She lost everything, but that was merely the consequence of her choice. I saw her trying to call me, leaving messages where she begged for forgiveness. But I no longer answered. My life with her was over. I couldn't go back to someone who had so easily betrayed my trust. Her downfall marked the end of this painful chapter for me. Now I could move forward, leaving it all behind. And for her, it became a lesson she likely would never forget. When something so painful and destructive happens in your life, it feels like you'll never recover. But over time, you begin to realize that even the darkest periods can make you stronger. And I realized that the betrayal I had endured wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life.